In 1935, Helen E. Haines published a work for librarians in training titled Living with Books, The Art of Book Selection. And it was such a popular book to be used in teaching that it went into many editions. There was a second edition published in 1950, and I have here the second edition, seventh printing from 1957. And it's a book specifically designed for librarian students, but it's written in such a way that those of us who are not studying to be librarians, and those of us who certainly weren't alive in the 1950s, are able to pick it up and enjoy its content today from our own perspective and our own situation. And it begins with a little introduction here that I think is just delightful. The introduction is titled The World of Books, and we begin with a quote from Thomas Carlyle, the hero as man of letters. And this quote reads as following: "All that mankind has done, thought, gained, or been, it is lying as in magic preservation in the pages of books. All that a university or a final highest school could do for us is still but what the first school began doing: teach us to read." And so this introduction is on the importance of reading and on books. And the introduction reads as follows: "As children learning to read, we step with indifference into the world of books. How we fare in it afterwards depends on how soon and in what measure indifference gives place to inclination and selection. And inclination and selection find their stimulus chiefly in the influence of what has been read upon the will to choose what shall be read. Evolution in reading," and that's in quotes there, evolution in reading, "proves its truth in the personal experience of everyone who knows and uses books. Standards are raised, intelligence is enlarged, perceptions are deepened through the simple process of reading. Books that meant nothing to a reader 10 years ago today penetrate his understanding and stimulate his own deepening realization of human experience. Books that 10 years ago were revealing or inspiring have long since been outgrown and forgotten. What may have sounded like balderdash at 20 may be the very tissue of truth when 40 winters besiege the brow," says John Mistletoe. "Formal education applies its patterns to the mind, but only through books does the mind itself enrich, deepen, apply, modify, and develop those patterns in individual life fulfillment. Intelligence must be kept active, playing over the education it is receiving, drawing its own conclusions, making its own observations and its own tests. Otherwise, we have simply a thin surface coating of applied instruction. Books are the instruments of intelligence. They are also, of course, the instruments of aberration and fallacy, for they are the expression of all the qualities and defects of the human mind. The more we know them, love them, and use them, the more their inexhaustible riches, their ever-increasing potencies are made manifest. Consider what books may mean in individual development, in the formation of character, in the activation of intelligence, in the enrichment of resources, and in the deepening of sensitivity. They offer building material for the formation of character through knowledge and thought. Such character making is a continuous unconscious process of self-education in the school of daily life. We may grow in maturity of judgment, in knowledge of the world, in ideals and principles, or we may remain stationary, gleaning nothing from the ripening harvests of experience. Or we may narrow and diminish in intelligence, indifferent to changing thought and expanding knowledge, or intolerant and antagonistic towards all that is outside our immediate experience. Growth is a determinate process of change, not in the essence of the individual being, the germ is unchangeable, but in mutation to broader, deeper understanding, to deeper insight and freer range. We may learn much simply from living and working, but the enduring materials of knowledge, prepared for us through centuries of thought and labor, are stored for our use in books. Through books, we gain what John Morley called the historic sense of progress through the ages. In other words, a background of understanding, a basis of familiarity with the interlocking of events, and with the great undercurrents that run, forever changing, yet forever the same, through human experience past and present. There cannot be broad intelligence or sound judgment without this. No one can form valid opinion or pass fair judgment on what is, who has not some ability to compare, to contrast it with what has been. Man's possessions and equipment today, achievements and realizations that would have been miracles to the men and women who lived only 100 years ago, are but later waymarks along paths of human effort and research worn slowly through 4,000 years. Ambrose Paré plodded towards the shining highway of modern surgery. Copernicus helped break the pathway to Palomar. Every succeeding generation widens and makes more firm the path. But take away the knowledge gained by the labor expended before our own day, and what should we have left? Through books, we have bridged the centuries and built the world's structure of achievement. Through books, we receive and enlarge the heritage of the human mind. This background of understanding in some degree is indispensable to enjoyment of good reading, and it builds itself from that enjoyment. To care for good reading, to keep on with good reading because you care for it, means that little by little this background takes on substance in the mind, and unconsciously, every new subject contemplated, studied, or enjoyed enlarges and enriches it. From every book, invisible threads reach out to other books, and as the mind comes to use and control those threads, the whole panorama of the world's life, past and present, becomes constantly more varied and interesting, while at the same time the mind's own powers of reflection and judgment are exercised and strengthened. Poetry, drama, novels, books that set the imagination at work, are potent agents in background building, weaving color and personality into the fabric of history and social progress. Background reading may be forward or backward. The present gives stimulus to explore the past. The tides of the past ebb and flow into the present. As the new physics teaches, there is no solid matter. All is change and motion in ourselves and our universe. Through reading, we are borne along on this flow and movement of life. Books give a deeper meaning and interest to living. There is nothing in daily work, in the most humdrum occupations, that cannot be made more interesting or more useful through books. They are means to proficiency in every calling. They are inexhaustible sources of pleasure. They bring to us life of the world as it was and as it is now. They supply increased resources. Those able to turn to books for companionship are seldom lonely, nor do they suffer from the need of finding some action, however trivial, to fill an empty hour. They have friends who will come when desired, bringing amusement, counsel, or some absorbing confidence. Friends who, unlike the human variety, may be dismissed when their conversation palls, and who may be chosen to suit whatever mood or interest is uppermost. Books impart deepened sensitiveness to ideals, to beauty, to pleasure, to the emotions of life. Living is feeling, and the more responsive the spirit becomes, the fuller and richer life it enjoys. There can be no true culture without sensibility. Every thought and every feeling has overtones that can be apprehended only through refinement and extension of the mind's perceptions. To recognize these overtones, to catch their delicate implications, and glimpse their variant elusive radiations, is one of the keenest and most enduring pleasures of life. This is the meaning of culture, as John Cooper Powys says. A mind that is totally uncultured gets its own special thrills, no doubt, from raw, direct contact with unmitigated experience. But a cultured mind approaches everything through an imagination already charged with the passionate responses of the great artists, so that what it sees is a fragment of nature, double-dyed, so to speak, a reach, a stretch of time's whirling tide that carries upon its chance-tossed eddies the pattern of something at once transitory and eternal. Reading transmits the current that keys and charges the mind to this responsiveness. Every class of literature, religion, philosophy, biography, history, science, poetry, fiction conveys its voltage of inspiration, wisdom, and knowledge. The influences that good reading can shed upon life are no Procrustean compulsions, but flow in manifold expression from the free spirit of mankind. Ideals of courage and endurance and purpose are created for thousands through such biographies as those of Joan of Arc, Lincoln, or Florence Nightingale. Sensitiveness to natural beauty is quickened through poetry or essay or vivid word picture. Sensitiveness to humanity, the ill-used race of man, is deepened through the pages of the great storytellers and dramatists. Changing currents of thought and purpose, conflict and turmoil, come to us through books. The present is always tumult and transition. In our immediate present, the impact of global war has shattered old stabilities and imposed new compulsions on man's relationship to man. Under the application of modern science, everyday life has accelerated and expanded as never before, and the whole form of civilization is changing. The books of today reflect the thoughts, the ideals, the weaknesses, and the strength of today. They indicate the paths on which its course is set. They illuminate and interpret its conflicts and its problems. With all its diversity and multiplicity, this modern literature is infused with a common purpose: the pursuit of truth. Truth in the individual use of the mind, truth in the understanding of man's physical organization, truth in recording the past, truth in recognition of equalities and shortcomings in the social fabric, truth in the testing and development of human relationships. It is a long pursuit, hampered, contested, deflected by inadequacies and dogmatisms, but stronger and freer today than ever before. What is good reading? The question is easier to ask than to answer. All reading, any reading, is better than none. Books that have given the greatest pleasure to the greatest number of readers are lifted above others by the tidal wave of felicity. Even books born only to die, like the coral insect, have left their trace of vital substance in the substructure of the world of literature. It is futile to attempt to specify what are the 10, 25, or 50 best books. That familiar phrase means only the books that are best to me. The choice of books must always be influenced by individual personality. Among any dozen persons who loves books, I doubt if there is anyone who, if honest, would not confess indifference or aversion for some acknowledged masterpiece. Yet, the books that everyone should know are all worth knowing. From them, every reader can draw his own measure of inspiration and wisdom. They are the sources of, the means to, background and understanding and appreciation of literature. As John Mistletoe says, one of the truisms about books is this, that the things you have heard since childhood were great really are great. Shakespeare's advice is still sound. No profit grows where is no pleasure taken. And brief, sir, study what you most affect. If you prefer history or poetry or biography or science or novels or philosophy or the discussion of economic and social problems, let your taste have free rein. But, though personal taste predominate, it must not wholly rule. Cultivate catholicity, savor the tang of adventure and discovery. There must be a certain rounding out of literature as a whole in reading if breadth of background is to develop. There must be an effort to keep mental elasticity and not let selection settle into a rut as time goes on and the mind's youthful demand for novelty is blunted. Variety is here both spice and substance. Under the high pressure of present-day living, how is time for reading to be found? This question is often propounded as unanswerable. Its only answer is that, for those who care for books, they will somehow slowly, as the years go by, come to know them widely and well. Those Protestants who love reading but never have a minute for it, in that plea invalidate their claim. For we all find time for the things most vital to us. Even half an hour a day of daily reading will, after 6 months, have brought a rich reward. An hour a day retrieved perhaps in fragments from the grasp of daily routine counts for more than would seem possible until its results are seen in perspective. Arnold Bennett wrote in his diary in 1908, "Decided that I must confine reading newspapers to odd moments and read every day some part of a serious work of instruction and also some verses. So yesterday and today I swallowed the whole of Hayes' Secret of Harvard. Now I understand what Herbartianism is. As for reading in bed, that practice long inhibited by traditional family disapproval has received scientific vindication in the researches of Lard and Mueller on sleep. Eugene Field discovered long ago that it is the improving and pleasing avocation of all true book lovers, and its justification was put in a sentence by Sir William Osler when he said, "With half an hour's reading in bed every night as a steady practice, the busiest man can get a fair education before the plasma sets in the periganglionic spaces of his gray cortex." It is most useful to keep a record of one's reading. Abbe Dimnit, in The Art of Thinking, emphasizes the value of note-making, of writing down what has been read or observed, and has made an impression on the mind that is felt to be of value. Of course, the fuller the note-taking, indicating the subject of the book, the opinion held concerning it, or copying some striking extract, the greater its value in deepening background of book knowledge and developing critical judgment. Magazines are far more widely read than books, but not by those who know the joys and values of reading. Magazines and newspapers, both dominant factors in American mass culture, are no more than accessories or deterrents to reading. And I think, just a side note here, we could say the same of social media today. TikTok, Twitter, no more than a deterrent to reading. They do not signify that wide-ranging and rich adventure in the world of books, that is real reading. Magazines have their place, their own usefulness, but no magazine can take the place of standard books. There are periodicals of literary value, of scholarly, technical, or specialized importance, essential to scholars and scientific and technical workers, and to men and women in every field. But if more Americans would read good books and cease reading promiscuous popular magazines, we should have a higher level of general education and intelligence. To bulwark and extend individual reading, there must be individual possession of books. The public library, offering its ever-renewing supply, is the common reservoir and dispensary of books that otherwise few could know or use. It makes the world of books part of everyday life. But all who care for books will possess some friends and intimates whose companionship cannot be restricted to a formal and limited visit. This may be the simplest and most inexpensive of indulgences, kept closely to low-priced reprint editions, or to favorite salvage from the flotsam of second-hand bookshops. It is not a question of money. Half of what most people spend without demur each month for the movies will bring beauty, wit, gossip, argument, wisdom, and glorious foolishness into any reader's intimate possession. Ownership of books has unending implications and possibilities. It may kindle the thrill of book hunting and develop into collectorship. It may yield material assurance of investment value. It may reveal unsuspected tastes or stimulate unrealized capabilities. It will surely deepen and stabilize in any household the intangible elements of culture. Immense energies of organized and concentrated publicity are directed toward placing automobiles, radios, electric refrigerators in every American home. But little attention is given to the value, joy, and pride derivable from the modest private library that ought to be the most indispensable of household utilities. Books are the most interesting and distinguished accessories of any home. Merely as furniture, they are cheaper and better decoration than oriental rugs or overstuffed chairs. They give a house character and meaning. The discerning eye looks for them in its first appraisal. Their absence is a negative finding upon the cultivation and intelligence of the household. Their presence is as illuminating of social, intellectual, and personal status as a merchant's association rating is of material stability and financial integrity. Librarianship is the only calling that devotes itself to bringing books into the common life of the world. The materials librarians work with are the materials which furnish the understanding, knowledge, and reason that can inform the mind and direct the will to meet the challenge of the time, to fit ourselves to its compulsions, to discern and guide the forces that are shaping the future. The great trade of publishing and bookselling, though it is the oldest and most universal agency for bringing together the reader and the printed word, has not the same range of opportunity, nor the same variety and intimacy of relationship to readers of all tastes, capacities, needs, habits, and levels of education. The spirit of delight and confidence in books, the receptive and adventurous attitude toward the new and experimental, the catholicity of lifelong friendship and understanding for literature are attributes of librarianship more than of any other calling. And those attributes must be fused in a dynamic of social consciousness, of confidence and purpose, if librarians are to rise to their potential leadership in welding public understanding and unity for the building of a safer and better world. Of course, the taste for books is not common to all. It is a spark latent in the individual, most often implanted by heredity, kindled by training or circumstance, and fed and tended by purpose and experience. But only those who possess this spark will draw from librarianship its full measure of inspiration and reward in the interpretation and enrichment of human life through books. For the world of books is the world of man's thoughts, effort, joy, and purpose, and inextinguishable hopes, as they pass in heritage from the past to the present, and as they are born of each immediate moment. And that is the end of the introduction. The role of books is held in high regard by our author, Helen Haines, and the role of the librarian is one of great importance as well. Librarians are stewards of knowledge, stewards of, I guess, the goodness of humanity, and they have this almost responsibility, from Haines' point of view, this responsibility to direct humankind in the right direction. And so that is the introduction to Living with Books. And I want to zero in here on one particular phrase from page 5 of this introduction, where Haines says, books give a deeper meaning and interest to living. And I've not seen it written quite so precisely as it is here, but that, I think, is one of the core reasons that many of us read. This act of reading, these physical books, diving into the thoughts of those from the past and those from present day as well. This act gives us kind of a deeper meaning, a deeper understanding, and a deeper interest in living in our lives. And there's another sentiment as well. Books are connecting us to history and sort of reaching out to future as well. And I think for me, those are like two of the core reasons that I even pick up books. Books somehow, in a way that is very difficult to describe, books give a deeper meaning to my life, and books connect me to, I guess, culture and to humanity and to those who have come before me. And in a way, I feel as though I'm reaching out both into the past and perhaps even into the future, because what I'm reading now will quite likely be read by other human beings in the future. And so, there's that. And I just love digging into these books about books. And this is really the first librarian's manual or textbook that I've come across. And it says right here in the front, Living with Books, number 2, Columbia University Studies in Library Service. And I do wonder just how many librarians this textbook had a profound impact on. Here we go. Background reading may be built forward or backward. And so reading, background reading as she calls it here, helps us reach into the past and can help us reach into the future and the present as well. We're building kind of this knowledge base, and that knowledge base can be, entirely historical, or that knowledge base can be about building skills and perspectives for the future, or I suppose it can also be both. And so that is all for today. I will see you again soon.